Okay, without giving it away, Madam Mayor, where are we this morning?
At the Hemingway House.
Oh, at the Hemingway House. How exciting.
I finally dragged Brett here.
I'm like, what is there to see at the Hemingway House?
Kitty cats.
Kitty cats,
Wow.
six-toed cats.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to love it.
There might be something about it that's interesting.
I think so. You know I love old houses.
But you know what I find interesting is that this is the most visited attraction in Key West. I heard that on the trolley, and I'm
So
like,
you should be hunting it down for why.
I'm like, yeah, why? I'm still hunting. I'm hoping at the end of this, I'm not still hunting that answer.
You won't be. You might even find the golden key in here if you really
Oh,
look.
the golden key. Now we're talking.
Okay?
Yes.
So stay focused.
So far today is going to be a very hot potato. I think we're supposed to hit the 80s.
That's a baked potato.
Baked potato. With the golden
Floridian
key.
style.
All right, I guess here we go. Every 15 minutes they have a tour, so let's get in line, shall we?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. All right, so they say we have about 15 minutes before the next tour, so we can just kind of walk around the grounds. Check it out.
You feel the temperature change?
Yeah, it's a beautiful property. Got a brick wall around it. It is one street off of Duval on Whitehead Street, so this is a busy area.
They got their own little kitty houses.
Hey, kitty, kitty, what you doing?
Pet. Watch out. I want to pet the kitty. Hi. Ain't he cute? They get to love all day.
Yeah, they got a rough life. There's cats everywhere. Ooh, look what I found. It's a cat cemetery. Is that like pet cemetery?
Just for cats.
Just for cats, right?
Yes, just for cats.
Not people.
No.
And not turtles.
No, just cats.
Oh.
I guess those are all the cats.
All the cat houses are colored the same as the house. Somebody definitely liked their cats.
It says this is John Wayne's penthouse.
Yeah. What's up, kitty?
I wouldn't mind being one of the cats here. They've got it made.
Yeah, they got it going on. Oh, you're fine. We don't see many pools here.
No. I think they said this was one of the first poles,
Oh, wow.
if I'm not mistaken. It's a pretty good size one for doing laps.
Yeah.
I could hang out in this yard. Nice shade from all the trees.
It's definitely
Beautiful.
a nice property. Ooh, that's some plush grass.
Isn't it nice?
Needs cut.
Great size yard.
Oh, this is neat. Taking a break.
Hanging out by the pool.
I see that.
See the pretty flowers?
Yep,
Are you amazed?
I'm getting there.
Do you think the golden key is inside of there?
It's yellow. Could be.
Look at this. Massive.
That's a big something. Oh yeah. You can see the top of the lighthouse and all the people.
I wonder if they can see us. These go from the floor all the way up, and then there's those screen doors behind it. So you could open it all up and get a great breeze in it.
everybody. Thank you so much for visiting the Key West home of Ernest Miller Hemingway, renowned journalist and author. My name is Katrina. It's my absolute privilege and delight to help you know the man behind the myth. For instance, when he lived in Key West, he never wore that turtleneck. He never wore that beard, and he was not an old man. He lived here throughout the 1930s. He was in his 30s. He was really in his prime. And he hadn't been wounded too badly yet by war or concussions, so he was very productive. And he wrote 70% of everything he would ever publish in his lifetime in the 9 years he was in Key West. This beautiful home that we're standing in, Asa Tift was the man who built it. He was a modern-day pirate. This man was what was known as a wrecker. In Key West in the 1850s, this was the richest city per capita for 40 years, and it was mostly due to the wrecking industry. Men like Asa would sail out to the reef when a ship went down. They would make a deal with the captain on the spot to offload all the cargo, all the survivors, and then a price was set. And when they sold everything at auction, the wrecker got to keep the majority of the profit. Well, he needed that money, because to build this house, he had a quarry down deep into the ground. We have no topsoil, there's nothing under here but rock and coral. But he used those big limestone blocks to build a 2,500 square foot mansion. But all that money, it didn't protect Asa from basic human tragedy. He built this home for his family. In 1851, he had a wife, he had 4 children. They all died before he did, all through various tragedies, epidemics. When he died in 1889, he had nobody to leave his home or property to. It was boarded up for 40 years. Eventually it went to auction, and that's when fate intervened. Ernest Hemingway and his second wife, Pauline Pfeiffer, were looking for a permanent home in Key West. She also had a very wealthy uncle, Uncle Gus Pfeiffer, and he bought this $8,000 for all the back taxes, and it became his wedding gift for the couple. Pauline had a real fixer-upper on her hands. Imagine a home boarded up for 40 years in the heat and the humidity. I bet it was a project, but she had a real eye for beauty. She had been a fashion editor for Vogue magazine in Paris. So when you see beautiful chandeliers like this, beautiful upholstery, it's all Pauline. And while she and Ernest traveled internationally, when something caught their eye, it got shipped back here and became part of the decor. They also raised their 2 boys, Gregory and Patrick, in this home. Pauline had her hands full. She was making this house a home. She was raising her 2 boys, keeping track of Hemingway. And he was busy writing every morning from 6 a.m. until noon, and in the afternoons he was fishing. He got to indulge his love of sports fishing. And in 1934, he was doing so well as a writer, he earned a very generous advance from Esquire magazine. He used it to customize this yacht to all his specifications, and he finally had the fishing vessel he always wanted. This is Pilar. Pilar was the nickname for Pauline, but this was his main girl. For 27 years, it was him and Pilar. But they needed a good captain, and that was his good friend, Gregorio Fuentes. This man became a lifelong friend to Hemingway, and he was the protagonist, the inspiration for Santiago, in Old Man in the Sea. Have you read Old Man in the Sea? I call it the gateway novel. If you're going to start with Hemingway, put aside the bullfighting and the war, start with the fishing. Everybody can relate. You could read Old Man in the Sea to any 8-year-old, and they would be thrilled by the adventure of it, because it's man against fish. It's man against himself, it's man against the elements. These are classic elements of any story. In 1952, when he wrote that novel, it had mass appeal. 1953, it won the Pulitzer. And in 1954, Ernest Hemingway received the Nobel Prize in Literature, mostly thanks to that novel. So Pilar was the main girl, but he had 4 wives, and they all added something to his writing, to his life, and his travels. So we're going to head next door and hear about the 4 Mrs. Hemingways. signs on the tables, and they never read a single one. Help us preserve our history. Please do not sit on furniture. The cats don't read. Come on, dear. Remember I said that while Hemingway lived in Key West, he was not wearing a turtleneck or a beard? This is what he looked like. He's a man in his 30s and his prime. He's a lifelong athlete, a real outdoorsman, an amateur boxer. He could write a little bit. Ladies, this is why 4 women said yes. This guy is a catch. I'm going to do my best to do 4 lives in 2 minutes. Let's go. Hadley Richardson, wife number 1. She was the Paris wife, and the woman who made him a father. They had a son together named John, and Ernest called his son Mr. Bumpy. He met Hadley at a cocktail party in Chicago in 1921. They married that year, and everybody told him, if you want to be a serious writer, you have to move to Paris. They became part of a group of expatriates. They were all well-known writers and artists. These were names you would recognize today. Pablo Picasso, Gertrude Stein, F. Scott Fitzgerald, who wrote The Great Gatsby, Ezra Pound. Imagine being able just to sit down and shoot the breeze with Ezra Pound if you had a new idea for your next poem. It was that kind of environment, very influential for Hemingway. But in 1827, Pauline introduced him to her best friend, Hadley introduced him to her best friend Pauline.
Uh-oh.
Ladies, I do not recommend that you ever do this. They had a very hot affair that ended his marriage to Hadley, and they soon moved to Key West while he was living here, while he was still married to Pauline. And by the way, they did raise their boys here, and there's a picture of them together with the first polydactyl cat on the island, or on the estate. One afternoon, he went to Sloppy Joe's bar, and there was this beautiful war correspondent, Martha Gelborg. And she was a very well-established journalist. There's no way she didn't know who Ernest Hemingway was. And there's a great likelihood that she might have scoped out Sloppy Joe's ahead of time, so she was sitting there right when he would come in for his afternoon beer. They hit it off, and soon they were running off to Spain together to cover the war. He was gone for a few years, and eventually Pauline gave him a divorce, and he was married to Martha only for about 5 years. This was not a match made in heaven. They had a lot of butting heads, a lot of jealousy between them professionally, because sometimes they competed for the same assignment, and they were both very, very driven, very ambitious people. So that jealousy eventually ended their marriage. And a year later, he met and married Mary Walsh. Now, she was a good fit for him because she was a writer. She had written for the Washington Post, but she wasn't competitive with him. And she loved to do all the outdoors things that he did. They went fishing together, hiking. They went downhill skiing. They went on safari. And they lived in Ketchum, Idaho, and also on his estate in Cuba. She was his widow when he died in 1961, and they've been married for 16 years. We're going to head upstairs next and see the private living quarters of Ernest and Pauline and their 2 boys. Make sure you're on the outside. We had some young ladies speak last week. Don't want to see a repeat. So real quick, we were talking about, come on through, Hemingway's life in Paris. Here's a rogues gathering. of some of those well-known artists and writers. You're welcome to come back through the mansion when we're done. Really take your time and look at what interests you. But I'd like to point out Gertrude Stein and her partner Alice. Gertrude was really important to Hemingway because she became a mentor. And she was the one who told him, put aside your journalism for a while and write from real life. Write about the war. Remember how Ernest, I don't know if anybody has read this other quote, he said, write about what hurts. So he really wrote from his real world experiences, and what do we know him for today? Writing about war, writing about hunting, writing about being in the bull ring, really exciting things. Here's Hemingway in Paris, and he was a very accident-prone man. He got that terrible gash and a very nasty concussion after a skylight fell on his head. And as we know, he had a lot of concussions through his life, about 9 that we know of. By the time he ended his own life in 1961, and there's a picture of him just a couple weeks before, he had had 9 concussions. He had had a lifetime struggle with bipolar, and he had had a lot of war wounds. He was cut off from Cuba. He couldn't get to his estate or the manuscripts that he left waiting there. Pilar was stopped at that estate. He had just been in and out of the Mayo Clinic, and he had had a lot electroshock therapy. Yeah, so that really scrambled the synopsis. He could still put sentences together, just not in a paragraph. He was no longer a writer or a storyteller. He also had a very interesting blood condition that kept too much iron in his blood. So he had a lot of joint and muscle pain throughout his life, and nobody knew what that was about, but that was passed around his family. A lot of his family members that committed suicide all had that same disorder. So that's known. So we're learning more and more about some of the things that troubled him. When he ended his own life, he was only 61. Still relatively young by today's standards. The thing is, while he was alive, he really lived. And that's what his stories are about. If you read his books, they are about living. These are the 3 cats that enjoy this room the most. We have Joe DiMaggio, this beautiful tiger. Joe's famous here because he's got 6 toes on every foot. And this is Betty Grable. And this Daisy Buchanan. Yes, Daisy Buchanan was the main character in The Great Gatsby. All right, let's all move over this way. It's a big room. I want to make sure everybody's got enough space. No more fainting on my tours. We all know about Sloppy Joe's. And the location that we know today is the second location. The original is where you see Captain Tony's. Captain Tony's, it replaced the original spot in about 1937. So that is actually where Hemingway drank. But Sloppy Joe Russell didn't want to pay more rent, so he moved across the street, built a bigger location, and a debris pile formed from the renovation. And Hemingway walked by one night and he spotted that porcelain urinal. He recognized it. He figured he had afforded enough down it. It was his. He dragged it home. I don't know what a porcelain urinal is, but he was a big, strong guy, and somehow he got it home. We can only imagine Polly's reaction upon discovering the latest. So she had a very wonderful artistic vision, and she put those beautiful tiles on it. She added this olive jar and a fountain, and it's been a favorite with the cats ever since. Why don't you just take my last red cent? She had a great sense of humor. She decided to keep it and put it right in the cement. Yep, she knew that was going to be a great story for all of her guests. And it was. And they did not remain married for very long after that. Soon, he was getting a divorce and going on with Martha. However, the boys were raised here by Pauline, and when she died in 1951, she never changed her will. They went back to Ernest. Ernest didn't want the house or the property, not really. The boys weren't interested, they were grown-ups too. So this got rented out to Navy officers. He was married to Mary at that time. So they were in Ketchum, Idaho, they were on Mr. State in Cuba, and when they would travel back and forth, this was a nice stopover point, and I'm sure the Navy officers have some story to tell. I can only imagine. I wish somebody had written a book from back then. So the penny remains to this day. It really is an 1934 penny that he threw out and thrown to the ground, not within around 30 feet or so. All right, so we're going to conclude our tour. And as we conclude our tour, I just want to thank all of you for being here, but I also want to suggest that now that you know a little bit more about Hemingway, and you know how he lived, live a little bit like Hemingway every day. He enjoyed lots of love, lots of creativity, and lots of adventure, and that's what I wish for each and every one of you. Lots of love, lots of creativity, and lots of adventure. Thank you for being with us today. Now stay right here to answer questions. Thank you so much. So you just really summer is amazing that he was as productive as he was. I mean, we didn't feel good a lot of the time.
It was like the field of 9 years, it was just a lot.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But you know, a lot of we had a great time seeing this. Did you know that? Yeah.
So this is Hemingway's writing studio, which acts more as a, I guess, restroom and bathhouse for the pool.
It's a man cave.
His man cave.
Little kitty up here.